At the center of just about every great story, there are the characters or people experiencing the world they're being put into. If a character isn't believable or doesn't come across with some kind of identifiable trait, you might see a disconnect between the audience and the story you're trying to tell. A big mistake we see modern creators make when they're creating a series, in our opinion, is not treating the characters they're introducing as people. They instead serve as a mouthpiece for an ideology, or they represent something completely unrelated to the narrative and come across like more of a prop than a person. If you're having trouble coming up with characters for one of your projects, or feel like you've bumped into some of these criticisms, today's behind-the-scenes video is all about how we come up with characters for the series. Hopefully it inspires you guys or helps you out. We'll be using a new character you guys have not been introduced to yet as an example. We typically approach all of the characters the same way though, so you'll probably see a few patterns. Meet our lovely little test subject for today, named Beet. She is, of course, named after a vegetable to keep in line with the established Dragon Ball world-building naming conventions. But even something like that is ultimately unimportant. The first thing we're going to look at is a way to create a character we like to think of as why. Why is it that this character needs to exist for the story? When you ask yourself this question, we find it easier to plug the character into the appropriate plot lines or story beats. If we can give a character a genuine purpose in the story, we've already done a little bit to make them feel less like a prop and more like a plot device. Of course, we want them to be a little more than that, so maybe we can approach the character from another direction on top of the why. If this character is a real person inhabiting this world we're setting up, what is their life like? What do they do in their free time? What is something that may interest them? Do they have a funny way of speaking? If this character was a genuine person, what sorts of conversations or interactions would cause their eyes to light up? What are some things that might disgust this character if they saw them or someone else brung them up? Could the character possibly have someone else that they could interact with on the cast in interesting or funny ways? Maybe our character has an aspect of themselves that they run away from, but an interaction with other characters causes them to embrace it later on? Perhaps our character has respect for authority figures, but absolutely disregards those that they should view as equals. These are all ways we can start to mold our characters into living, breathing pieces of a much larger picture. By just changing the accent I speak to you guys with, I can become a completely different character myself. Isn't that interesting how that worked? By just imagining the character speaking in a different way, you might be able to give them an entirely different setup than you imagined. It is such a fun and rewarding experience. Let's look at Beet again. Her official cast member page description describes her as a tomboyish time patroller with a lust for battle and a pure heart. She definitely isn't the greatest fighter, often finding herself on the losing end in spars with anyone with decent knowledge of martial arts. She's only recently learned how to transform, but as your typical warrior from her race, she is a big fan of high-stakes battles, hearty meals, and training, of course. She absolutely hates losing at any and everything, wasting time or confined spaces. While it may seem weird to throw these little quirks about her in there, they help mold her into a more believable person. By just knowing these little details about this new character, you can already imagine her interactions with Cable, Aipom, or anyone else you may be familiar with that already exists in the series. And that is the beauty of trying to make a character fit into a world as their own person. The more you're able to answer and fill out about these characters you're designing, from what their fears are to what makes them happy, the easier the character will be to write for in a variety of settings. The character doesn't just become a reference or meme-spouting machine, they become someone a member of your audience can connect to. A character can be so much more than a collection of colors and lines on paper. Beet started as a deconstruction of the existing character Goku. You already know what race he is. You know that he likes to train, he likes to eat, and he loves a good fight. Now what if we flipped his gender? What if she lost more battles than she won? What if she absolutely hated being in confined spaces? What if she had a weird childhood event that made her absolutely hate the color purple? What if she threw tantrums or made up excuses anytime she lost at anything from board games to foot races? What kind of comedy could come from that? How would this character react to meeting someone with more experience than her that can do all of the things she does? Who does this character find attractive if it is relevant to anything in the storyline? These are all of the types of questions you can ask yourself about your characters to flesh them out and make everything involving them so much easier to work with. Your characters are only one note if you let them be that way. Don't let a character be as deep as a single question answered about who they are if you really care about their impact on the story. And please don't feel like you need to have every single thing planned out for a character before things get rolling. If a character is treated like a living, breathing individual, they aren't perfect. They don't have all of the answers, but they will always have room to grow. You can have a character molded by their experiences and who they spend their time with. A good example of this from the series itself is Cable. He, of course, isn't the same character by the end of the series, and this is a fate that people who viewed the final episode decided on by reaching the to grow ending. Before scripting even started, Echo had almost no personality or driving purpose aside from, this is the character that is going to steal a main character's body and raise hell. You can see how much deeper she became over time. Please, be patient with your creative process and be open to molding your world into something you are truly proud of. If you want the 100% patented Adventures of Aipom character sheet to follow, we got you. You can, of course, use this for anything, even if it isn't for a series of your own, and you want to play around and see what kind of crazy characters you can come up with. What are your limits for the character as far as existing goes? When it comes to the Adventures of Aipom, we're piggybacking off of the established Dragon Ball Xenoverse setup, so tonally the characters we make for the series aren't overly edgy or named anything that may take away from the experience. What is the character's name? Does it have any sort of particular meaning? Are they connected to another character in some way, shape, or form? This is one of the easiest ways to make related characters and can turn into an entire family tree if you let yourself get creative. What are the character's likes and dislikes? Simple answers at first. These are things that you can elaborate on later to refine the character. Maybe your character likes spicy foods and specifically has a quirk where they always put hot sauce on everything. I think you get the point. What are their stats? Do they excel at something and completely suck at something else? How strong are they? How skilled are they with their abilities? How effective are their strategies? How fast can this character move? Things like this will help you keep your power scaling in check. We know that's a big point of contention when it comes to characters interacting with each other. The more you prepare, the easier it will be to fill up your roster. This is the exact process we've used for all 55 characters in the Adventures of Aipom series and counting. I genuinely hope that this little video helps some of you out with your creativity or approach to character creation, or at the very least gives you some insight into how we try and pull off the things we do for the series. Now, I ask you, my lovely writing team, is this video good enough for us to push out as a behind-the-scenes sort of deal, or no?
Yeah, totally. Sorry for the wait. We're working on it.
And with that, we've reached the end of this week's journey. I'm hoping to see you all again pretty soon with a casting call update and new vignettes if anyone gets casted. Otherwise, stay tuned for news about the Adventures of Aipom webcomic. Take care of yourselves, people!